Very good afternoon to all enthusiasts from Asia. Good morning to all participants from Europe and North America. And good evening to all participants from Australia. We have received warm responses from the industry as well as from the academic sector in form of participation. We are glad to have more than 1,000 participants representing 15 countries. On behalf of Adani Institute of Infrastructure and myself, I welcome you all to a timely relevant discussion on post-COVID-19 new normal scenario in global construction industry practices, organized by Adani Institute of Infrastructure India in collaboration with Liverpool John Moores University, UK. Before we go ahead, let me show you the flow of the event. This webinar is structured in 3 rounds. In round 1, the panelists will talk about the construction industry scenario from past to current date. In round 2, they will talk about the future of construction industry, where they will emphasize the new normal scenario along with its challenges. And in round 3, the panelists will give answers to the questions of participants. Now, let me introduce you all with our prominent speakers of today's webinar. Indeed, we are fortunate enough to have different continent stalwarts as our panel experts belonging to industry practices, research, consultancy, and academia. Our first speaker, we are having with us Mr. Ashok Shrivastava. Mr. Ashok Kumar Shrivastava is Assistant Vice President, Center of Excellence, Reliance Jio Infocom Limited, Mumbai, India. He has almost 3 decades of rich professional experience and expertise in the field of construction and project management of power plants, chemical plants, textile process plants, refinery, petrochemicals, telecommunication, as well as the construction of modern township, multi-story towers, and whatnot. He is also a National Technical Advisor for Durability of Structure and Rehabilitation of Structure at IIT Delhi and IIT Mumbai. He has received awards from GHCL, CEO, and many more. He has been appreciated by all the top management like CEO, where he has been working for. He has proven experience of engineering, licensing, construction management, technical competency, quality setup, and HSEF function to take challenging assignments to ensure the effective and safe implementation of every construction activities within cost and time schedule. I welcome you, Ashok, to this panel. Our next panelist, we have Professor Bahira Abdul Salam. She is a founder and CEO of Composite Infrastructure Innovative Solutions Corporation, Canada. She is a licensed professional engineer in Ontario, Canada. She is having over 3 decades of rich industrial and engineering experiences in the design of construction of major engineering projects in North America, Canada, and Middle East. She has obtained numerous national and international engineering awards and distinctions. She was a guest editor for ASC Special Publication and member of ACI's 440 committee. She also served as professor at Canberra College, Canada, and currently working as a professor in Global Innovative Campus. She obtained her PhD from University of Sherbrooke, Canada, and her master's and bachelor's in civil engineering from Cairo University, Egypt. I welcome you, Bahira, to this panel. Our next speaker is Professor Kunal Kansara. He is a chartered engineer with almost 2 decades of experience in practice and R&D in civil and infrastructure engineering, with a major focus on bridges and industrial infrastructure. He pursued his PhD from University of Bath, UK, and alumnus of LD College of Engineering, Ahmedabad. He is a technical member of the American Concrete Institutes Committee, ACI, and the International Federation of Structural Concrete, FIB Commission 3. He is also a technical reviewer for the ACI Structural and Material Journals. Prior to joining LJMU, he has worked as principal engineer and team leader at multinational consulting companies in UK and as an engineering scientist at SERC India. He has also been a visiting researcher at University of Hong Kong and University of Germany. I welcome you, Kunal, to this panel. Our next speaker is Professor R. Evgeny. Professor R. Evgeny is multidirectional industry expert with more than 2 decades of experience. He is owning one of the biggest design company in Ekaterinburg city called as Effect Project. Along with his professional work, he is an adjunct professor in Ural Federal University, Russia, which is one among the top 15 universities of Russia. He is also key member of famous summer university program of Corfu. He pursued his bachelor's and master's from Ural Federal University with exceptional academic records. He is not only a proficient user of ANSYS, ING Plus, and PIM, but also he has developed his own program, RealDoc and Rabbit Helper, which helps different organizations who are working with contractor and consumers. He worked extensively in the field of mass concreting. I welcome you, Evgeny, to this panel. Our last but not least panelist, Mr. Shah Brad. Shah has more than 2 decades of experience in structural design, civil engineering, and project delivery globally, with half of it across Australia. He also works with many consulting engineers and consulting companies in various positions. He has developed in-depth skill in contract management, construction engineering, and technical management. He completed his bachelor's in civil engineering and MS with specialization in construction project management. He has extensive experience in the design of concrete, steel, and timber, the structural building, and has also supervised the construction of many large-scale multi-story buildings. His innovative engineering ideas provides their clients with multiple options to add value to their projects. Also, his excessive knowledge in engineering has made him a reliable person for peer reviewing many of the projects. I welcome you, Shah, to this panel. Once again, I welcome you all on this board. The ongoing crisis has served as major disruption to the development of ecosystem. Needs on the ground are rapidly changing. Navigating this time requires organizations to be more agile than ever and prioritize their organization's sustainability by simultaneously fortifying their weaknesses and seizing the new opportunities. Most domestic businesses are likely to repurpose their grants to meet the immediate and midterm needs of their projects and promises. Navigating organizations through the current crisis will be an uphill battle for most of the leaders, but can present a wave of opportunities as well. The photograph itself says a very clear message. It seems that the whole world is sleeping for quite a long time. Or sometimes we can understand that majority of the cities becomes a ghost cities. Figure number 1 and figure number 3 are clearly giving us message that because of this COVID-19, the whole world pollution has drastically changed, reduced, but at the same time, the whole world has badly impacted because of this COVID-19. WHO report 2020 says very clearly in this figure 1 that the developing economies has, in terms of the growth rate of GDP, which was earlier in 2019 3.7, has reduced to minus 3.0. And same thing for advanced economies, which was earlier 1.7, has reduced to minus 8.0. It means that compared to developing economies, the advanced economies has lost more growth rate percentage in terms of the GDP growth. Figure number 2 very clearly says that out of all the leading economies of the world, the China is the exceptional case, which has very minimum loss because of the COVID-19. And the reason behind that is China has recovered in a very early phase, and majority of their all businesses are on track now. If you go to the stock market analysis, the sectoral stock market analysis of figure 1 clearly says that during this last 3-4 months of COVID-19 phase, the IT and pharma sectors are the only 2 sectors which has gained a good growth. The rest of all the sectors has very bad or very lean phase during the last 3-4 months. If you go to the figure number 2, it clearly shows that during the March 2020, there was a sudden fall in majority of all the stock markets. After that, slowly and gradually, majority of all the stock markets of different countries of the world has recovered. And out of all the countries which are shown here, China and Russia are the two countries which has minimum loss in form of the stock market decrement. Before I go to the round number one, I would like to take a view of my participants. So I request Kiran Bhai to please upload the poll question to all the participants. Yeah, I believe it is visible to your screen. The question is, how do you see the need of innovations in present pandemic conditions in construction industry? The options are option A, certainly needed, option B, maybe needed, option C, not sure, option D, probably not needed, and option E, certainly not needed. You are having 30 seconds to give your responses. Here, our meaning by innovation is the new ways of thinking or new ways of working is required. I welcome your responses. I would like to wait for a moment till that point. We can get the response results. Yeah, the responses are available now. Out of 268 responses, 125 are saying certainly needed, 24 are saying maybe needed, 5 are saying not sure, and 112 could not submit their answer within the time frame. Thank you for your responses. Let's move to the round number one. Kunal, was the UK construction industry status before COVID-19 satisfactory according to you? Over to you.
Hello everyone. Thank you Vikram for all this starting and taking all pain for arranging everything. I hope I'm audible to everyone. In context to your question, yes, construction industry has been of tremendous importance to the UK economy. You can see some figures here. It contributes a significant chunk economical in terms of economic output. At the same time, it also creates a huge amount, considerably probably biggest chunk from across all industry that comes from construction. So that on those two counts, it is actually contributing a lot to the British economy. The photo that you are seeing here actually says some more side of it. If you see, this is the skyline of London taken on a supermoon night at some point. You can see I've been to London so many times over years, and every time I see it, there will be some towering cranes popping out from behind a big tall building, and you can see here those things. And that signifies that London, despite being overpopulated, despite being running to its full capacity, it is always under construction. And that's one phase of British construction industry. Next slide, please. And according to me, I see there are two specific characteristics of the British construction industry. One of them is its high self-employment rate. So for every 100 employed people, if you take on an average, 36 of them will be self-employed. And another salient feature of British economy, British construction industry, is that unusually high number of unregistered businesses. For every one registered business in construction, there are two unregistered businesses in construction. And these two factors put together puts tremendous complexity, brings tremendous complexity into the equation when the government or any social help wants to extend financial support to construction industry. Next slide, please. So what was the future look like before lockdown? Well, here in England, we were looking at 2025, where the global economy was estimated to be of the order of $12 trillion. And the British construction industry and the government was gearing up to get big chunk of this big cake. In terms of policies, they have ambitions to drastically lower the cost of construction, reduce the construction time of delivery, and reduce the emissions associated with construction. At the same time, improve the export to the UK, from the UK to EU and worldwide. Next slide, please. So the question here we must ask is that, was everything normal before the lockdown? Next slide, please. And I'll argue for both the things. Yes, it was everything normal. At the same time, some of the things were abnormal as well. Here are the examples of the normal. You can see economy was doing significantly good compared to 2007. There was a 12% increase in the economic output. And this 12% figure you should see in terms of what it has done. You can see from 2007, it has 12%, by 12% it has increased. And just in 2 months' time, 20% of the economic output has been shrunk. So just this is the impact of COVID. In 2 months, it has wiped off the economic progress of almost 2 decades. And the second example here you can see is the London Olympics in 2012, which was a glaring success, showing the successful face of the British industry, what it can deliver. It's one of the most successful Olympics ever constructed and ever conducted. With zero fatality rate. It was the only Olympic so far which has not occurred any fatality involved during the construction. The safety and injury rates are 3 times as better than the construction industry's norm. And that shows that British industry not only can deliver complex tasks without compromise on health and safety, at the same time they mean business in the sense that while for construction of this London Olympics, there was around, if I'm not mistaken, around 8 billion pounds was investment. Against that, we got 14 billion pounds worth of revenue from conducting these games. That simply means British construction industry has capacity and means business. Next slide, please. And the abnormal side. So from social perspective, economic perspective, and environmental perspective, there were so many things to be fixed. We had in construction industry highly skewed gender equality statistics. We had big chunk in terms of economic deficit for infrastructure development and maintenance. And the construction industry before lockdown was considered to be 10% contributing to the greenhouse gases of the UK. On the other hand, last 3 years, we have seen significant tragedies and collapses and some other issues related to, which directly or indirectly related to construction industry. Those who are well versed with the British news, you can remember that Grenfell Tower in London caught fire and costed life for quite a big number of people. I wouldn't go into the details, it's very disturbing figures there. And while we are seeing all these pictures and statistics, we should remember that we are talking about 2020 Britain. It's not an emerging economy we're talking about. So it was certainly not everything was normal and good before lockdown. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Kunal. Kunal, if it was a dicey situation before COVID-19, then how do you see the impact of COVID-19 in the construction industry in the UK now? Over to you.
Right, okay, I got it right, okay. Thank you very much. Sorry, there was a glitch. I could not hear the question clearly, but I got the answer. I have some partly I could hear and I'm going along with my answer. You know, this picture sums up quite a big of a story that I wanted to say. Just until May, the entire political arena and everywhere in the construction businesses, people were significantly concerned about Brexit. And our Prime Minister here, while he was looking forward to have a cool summer ice cream while done and dusting the Brexit, he hardly knew that significantly more bigger challenge in terms of coronavirus was lurking right behind, a week after that. So this picture sums up. It gives a huge kind of knee-jerk reaction saying, what on earth just happened? It was taken everyone by surprise. And so was the construction industry. It took by surprise as well. Next slide, please. And the effect of COVID has been also considerable. You can see here, those who are not very aware of the geography and political setup of UK. UK comprises of 4 nations, 4 countries, Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. And everywhere the effect of COVID is in terms of construction was seen, but different gradients. There was initial confusion whether to close or not to close, because you can see that while the country is just coming out of a big change in terms of Brexit, everyone was thinking in terms of economic growth and economic development and adapting to new laws and regulations that was likely to come after Brexit. And before we even can have a cool breeze after Brexit has just happened in January, that was the time when the COVID took over. And you can see the construction site closure early in April, and then by July it has drastically increased as well. You can see that huge number of businesses got affected. The most significant sector as far as the UK construction industry is concerned was housing sector, which was worst affected. We presume at this point that it will be V-shaped plunge that will be the plunge in the economic output of the UK construction industry, which we think within 2 years time or so it will recover, but time only can tell whether it's a V-shaped or an L-shaped plunge. Next slide, please. And overall impact of all these things, we have some iconic projects going on, which has created a lot of hype, positive and negative, huge amount of employment and potential growth in GDP we were expecting after successful completion of this project. There were many of challenges were already there before COVID happened, and COVID added the last big blow. And just get to know a few weeks back that government's report now declared that, for example, High Speed 2 is one of the important projects that, and along with that, other few more important projects are deemed to be unachievable. And that's the not only impact of COVID, but COVID has played the big last blow. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Kunal. Now let me move to Australia, where Mr. Saab is there. Saab, will you please update us about what was the construction industry status before COVID-19, and what are the current COVID cases there in Australia? Over to you.
Thank you, Vikram. Thanks to Adani and John Moores Universities for organizing the webinar, and hello from Sydney to all our attendees around the world. According to Figure 2, as you see here, prepared by Master Builders Australia, while it was expected that the construction industry to pick up after a few years of downturn, COVID impacted the situation, and even though it did not take it back to what happened in 2010 and 11, it dropped the expected growth, which was just getting steady. So we expect this drop to become flat again by around mid-2021 or towards the end 2021. As you see in the same graph, the relationship between residential and government-funded projects are inverse. As an example, if you look at 2012 and 13, when residential was at its lowest point, infrastructure and heavy industry experienced a major increase. At early stage of COVID, the shock was so high, as according to a survey by Royal Australian Institute of Architects, 89% of projects were cancelled or went on hold straight away. And according to what we experienced and we are experiencing now in the field, those projects have not started after 6 months. Again, according to MBA, Master Builders Australia, a drop of almost 30% is expected in residential sector, which is a more optimistic scenario to what RAIA survey previously provided. Can you go to the next one, please? So let's have a look on statistics related to COVID cases in Australia. In the first wave, about 9,000 cases were confirmed with more than 100 deaths. And number of confirmed cases just now is about 15,000. This is mainly due to the second phase. Most direct and indirect cases were related to Australians who rushed back to the country between January to mid-March. And this is before the borders were closed. And example of incidents related to this could be the Robbie Prince ship, which docked at Sydney Harbour and disembarked 2,700 passengers. and later 600 cases were connected to this ship. And the second wave that has started in Victoria is happening as physical and social distancing have been relaxed beyond the limits that were set by the health authorities. And we just hope the condition come under control before another national outbreak through. Back to you, Vikram.
Thank you. Saab, as you have seen in July, there is a second wave of COVID-19 cases. Then how do you see the impact of this COVID-19 cases in the construction industry at your place? Over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So this is how I would describe the short-term impact of COVID on construction industry here in Australia. According to Australian Construction Industry Forum, the construction industry shrunk by about $14 billion, which is about 4% drop. And on top of that, there has been 6.5% drop only in jobs related to construction. So what is happening now, or other impacts, one could be like what we call it work from home, which has been implemented for the tasks that did not need physical presence in the offices, on sites. But for construction sites, physical distancing rules have been implemented, which accordingly reduced the performances. This is something that has caused people to go on sites and work on Sundays, which is something that has been very rare in Australia. If you go to the next slide, please. According to this graph, you see most affected industry is hospitality, with almost 250,000 jobs, job losses, and like 125,000 stood down in the same industry. So government has introduced two schemes to assist many unemployment, and mostly, as I said, related to hospitality or service industry. JobKeeper is one scheme that has been designed to encourage employers to keep their staff at their works. So this is basically a fortnightly payment per staff to the employers to keep their employees. So, but since this does not cover the full salary of the staff, employers had to reduce the working hours of the staff and let them go, or just justify the amount of work they do. And accordingly, the total efficiency has dropped. And another scheme is called Job Seeker, which provides payments to the people who have already lost their jobs and they're actively looking for a new job. So this is mostly helping those people just to partly catch up with the loans and other debts that they could have until they find a job. If you go to the next slide, please. But let's look at other relief plans that were introduced by the Australian government for industry. One scheme is introduced to allow people to access a portion of the superannuation funds, which were saved for their future retirements, and it is usually locked until age 65 and over. But now people have access to partly use that. And in addition, there are informal agreements that I can say relaxing commitments between tenants and landlords, which mostly applicable when there is a mutual understanding between two parties. For example, if a tenant literally is incapable of payment of his rent and there is no other tenant to be replaced with, the landlord has no other option but accept the situation and agreeing to postpone those payments to a future time. Back to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Shah. Now let me move to Canada, where Professor Bahira is there. Bahira, will you please update us about the construction industry performance over there and what is the situation of COVID-19 cases? Over to you.
Introduction, and I'm really delighted to speak to you this morning from Toronto. Actually, the construction industry in Canada has been in the middle of a major boom. there have been exciting new innovations and technologies and growing need for workforce and skilled workers. Canada is ranked the second in the world by the U.S. Building Green Council for the LEAD program. So the well-being of the Canadian economy is directly linked with the construction industry. So there is, because of the contribution of the construction, there are large-scale projects regarding buildings and the infrastructure sectors are ongoing from coast to coast. For example, Bruce Power nuclear power plant, the Garner Expressway project. So there is a lot of work going on, and the federal government is investing more than $180 billion in the next 12 years. Actually, women also are participating actively in the construction. It is estimated like 40% of the construction workers are women. Next, please. So the first case of COVID-19 in Canada was diagnosed in Ontario and in Quebec on January 27. All of the Canadian provinces and territories declared the state of emergency by mid-March. As a result, the highest number of the confirmed cases were in Quebec and Ontario, and the provinces ordered shutdown for construction projects in some cases. Others have deemed construction as an essential business. So this forced the construction in Canada to slow pace. Over to you, Bertrand.
Thank you, Beira. Beira, you have maximum cases nearby you. Okay. Then how do you see the impact of this COVID-19 cases there in Canada and Toronto itself? And what would be the stakeholders' stand in the last 3-4 months you have observed? Over to you.
There have been a strong impact of COVID-19 on the construction industry in Ontario and in Greater Toronto area. In general, millions of people lost their jobs, and the economy in Canada was extremely affected. In construction, as an example, approximately 1 out of every 7 Ontarians were working before the coronavirus pandemic hit the province have lost their jobs, according to Statistics Canada latest labor survey. So the Canadian government took immediate action in order to support Canadians and businesses facing hardship during this outbreak. And it was clear that there was a dependence of the global supply chain, and there was we had to change our way of thinking because of the supply chain and how we are going to proceed with the construction, especially if we have suppliers from overseas. Now the construction sites are obliged to follow health and safety measures, which are expected to affect productivity somehow. However, it is essential in order to protect the workers in the construction industry. The federal and provincial government call for social distances means the business must facilitate flexible and remote working arrangements that adapt to the pandemic. So for sure there was an effect on the employment. In June, all provinces recorded an increase in the employment after lifting the COVID-19 restrictions, which began in May. Next, please. So regarding the construction contracts, so this is really, there is a huge debate about this because actually it had to be reassessed. The contracts which were ongoing was affected because of this slowdown and the shutdown in some locations. So there is a debate about how force majeure clauses work in the pandemic and the relevant occupational health and safety issues. Contracts need to be revised, legal issues relevant to understanding the relationship on how the stakeholders would protect their payment rights and investments in the construction project. There was also an impact which was very clear in the real estate market in Canada, especially here in Toronto. It was doing very well. However, it slowed down obviously because of the situation and viewing the units and everything. So in order to minimize the impact of the crisis and ensure building continuity, so the stakeholders had to take immediate measures. So some of the stakeholders issued some guidelines that need to be respected. For example, on April 19, 2020, the Canadian Construction Association issued standardized protocols for all Canadian construction sites. Those protocols outline the best practices in order to maintain health and safety of workers, which is required to perform during the COVID-19 crisis. Construction projects also that were delayed due to different reasons. For example, some subcontractors had to terminate their contracts, and the powerful impact of the coronavirus situation on the supply chain, which resulted in construction delays. And most of the construction law experts agree that standard builder and business interruption insurance policies provide coverage when there has been a proof of physical loss. However, for the COVID-19, it is not really clear if courts are going to consider those circumstances are as unforeseen. The Canadian government is continuing currently to reopen the economy. A team of local and national building associations have put together a plan. They believe it will help kick up and kickstart the Canadian construction industry. This plan recommends focusing on the Greater Toronto area because it is considered that it is the engine of the Canadian economy. So that's it for the question. Back to you.
Thank you, Beira. Now let me move to Russia, where Professor Evgeny is there. Evgeny, will you please update us about construction industry practices before COVID-19 in Russia as well as in France? Over to you.
Thank you, Vikram, for inviting me in this webinar. When we are discussing about development of Russia for the period of 2010-2020, we have to notice that we can find a few different stages in this development. First, we can see powerful rising of economy and industry at period of 2010-2012. This rising may be explained with recovering of world's economy after international financial crisis of 2008. Next, we can mark the period of relative stability where main indicators of economy stay unchangeable up to 2014. Crisis of 2014 is explained affecting of international sanction policy. And finally, from 2014 up to 2020, we can talk about slow recovery of economy and its adaptation to the new reality with international sanctions. Undoubtedly, development of building industry reflects a general movement of economic situation in Russia, and as we can see from figure 3, situation in construction of main types of building is like main trends of economy. Next slide, please. Let's consider employees in construction industry in Russia from 2000. We can notice main trends as shown. Rising of employments in construction industry at period of 2000 up to 2008, up to date international financial crisis of 2008. Second, we have to mark some falling of employments in construction industry in 2008. Finally, we can see period of stability, which is reflect development of other branches of economy. Next slide. Similar to most other countries, coronavirus made powerful impact in Russia. First cases of infection were registered in Russia in February of 2020. Russia currently has largest number of confirmed cases in Europe and has the fourth highest number of confirmed cases in the world after the United States, Brazil, and India. According to figures from the National Coronavirus Crisis Center, Russia has almost 800,000 confirmed cases. Next slide, please. Now, let's talk about general situation in construction industry in France. We have to say that performance of infrastructure sector is developed quite better than real estate sector in France. As we can see from figure 1, part of infrastructure construction in total value rise significantly in 2015. Next trend, which we can notice from figure 2, is decreasing of contribution of construction industry in France GDP. As we can see, this decreasing take place since 2010 with short break in 2012 and the period of 2014-2015. Over to you, Vikram.
A peak in April 2020, and then after slowly and gradually the cases are decreasing. Then how do you see the impact of these COVID cases in France as well as in Russia? Over to you.
Let's consider financial measures from government of Russia. We can see significant help in different directions, main as deployed. Moratorium on bankruptcy. This measure is available to organizations and individual entrepreneurs included in the list of the most affected sectors of economy. Moratorium on business inspections. This measure is available to all taxpayers. Credit holidays for business. This measure is available to all small and medium-sized enterprises operating in the most affected areas. Interest-free salary loans. Large, medium, and small businesses, as well as individual entrepreneurs from the most affected industries can take an interest-free loan from Bank of Russia for 6 months to pay employees' salaries. Next slide, please. For system foremen and biggest enterprises, we can see a range of additional measures like this. Soft loans for working capital replenishment, a moratorium and bankruptcy, and several other measures, as you can see. And I must say that one of the most significant measures is subsidizing mortgage rates for individuals. The preferential rate is 6.5 per annum. The regular rate is about 10%. Next slide. The coronavirus has significantly affected France. In mid-March, the government introduced a range of measures to reduce the spread coronavirus, including school closures, the ban of all non-essential activities, outings, and long-distance travel, and the introduction of nighttime curfews in some cities. The French economy contracted by 6% in first quarter 2020 compared to the previous quarter. The cost of fiscal package for household and firms, as well as the healthcare sector, are officially estimated at around 16.5 billion euros. This is about 0.7% of 2019 GDP. Next slide. Let us consider effect of COVID-19 to manufacturing in France. We can see serious falling of manufacturing in France from days of international financial crisis of 2008. 2008. Decreasing of manufacturing in this year is about 50% from average values. Similar situation we can see in employment in France. Decreasing of employment is about 30%. Next one. Government of France also makes big steps in supporting of economy. For example, support from the state and the Bank of France, credit mediation. Support in the handling of a conflict with customers or suppliers by the business ombudsman. On the other side, we can see measures for softening of tax payment as represented. The payment of all direct and indirect taxes are postponed for the period of 3 months upon request to the competent tax center. Personal income tax is lifted, and wide spectrum of other kinds of support also. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Evgeny. Now let me move to India, Mumbai, where Mr. Ashok is there. Ashok, how was the construction industry performing there in India? Obviously in India. And what is the status of COVID-19 cases? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Vikram, for inviting me and giving an opportunity to join as a panelist in this webinar. Looking through the first COVID positive case found in Kerala on 30th Jan and gradually increasing, total number of cases recorded 14.84 lakh as on today. In India, first Janata curfew was observed on 22nd March, a 14-hour voluntary public curfew proposed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The nationwide curfew was implemented on 25th March in phases until relaxing limits on commercial activities from 1st June. The government started unlocking the country in 3 unlock phases, maintaining social distancing and high sanitization standards. Government launched Arog Set app, joining Digital India to alert people about coronavirus patients. India is now the 3rd most affected country in the world, behind Brazil and US. The 1 lakh recorded on 19th May and 2 lakh on 3rd June and 10 lakh crosses on 17th July 2020. With recovery rate of 62.93%. 6 major cities account of COVID-19 are most affected for around half of all reported cases in the country: Mumbai, Delhi, Chennai, Kolkata, Ahmedabad, and Pune. Next slide, please. Figure 1 shows global contribution of construction industry is average 4.2%, whereas Indian construction industries has contributed average 7.4% in overall GDP of last decade. Figure 2 shows size of different infrastructure sector in USD billion. Top 3 performing sectors as far as size is concerned are power, road and bridges, water infrastructure, while port, airport, oil and gas have substantial growth but not in considerable size. It is visible from figure 3 that after China, India is the 2nd highest performing nation in leading nations, which an average year-on-year industrial growth of 3.42. India had right around 60 million construction laborers. Next slide, please. Figure 1 shows in 2015, percent share of construction industry as well as infrastructure industries was little higher. Compare the almost steady growth after 2015 till date, and it has observed peak in 2011. Construction industries of 10.5 trillion in Indian rupees and represent around 7 to 8% of the country GDP, utilizing near 57.5 million individuals. From figure 2, though the percent of share is steady after 2015, but the size of construction industries has seen huge progress after 2015. As far as 2 sections of construction industries is concerned, building industry shown in red color has bigger size compared to infrastructure sector because of large population needs. Construction equipment manufacturing industries comprises around 500 companies and is assessed to be estimated 375 billion by 2020. Over to you, Vikram. Next slide.
How do you see the impact of these cases here? Over to you.
Figure 1 categorized top 100 companies which have performed exceptionally well during the COVID time. It shows that technology, pharma and healthcare and e-commerce companies have grown well in last 4 months. but real estate or construction companies have faced opposite bend. To support referring figure 2, which clearly indicates that even in favorable scenario, there would be a drop of 13% in investment, 15% in GVA, and 11% in employment. While in worst scenario, there would be reduction of 30% in investment, 34% in GVA, and 25% in employment. So it visibly confirms that construction industry is passing through sensitive phase. Experience all undergoing projects may differ in schedule of half year to 9 months, depending on the geography and spread of coronavirus in and around the project site. Construction related GBA may lessen between 15% to 34%, and business is relied upon by 11% to 25%. Contrast with pre-pandemic projection for financial year 2021. The construction and fragment segment, if you see this all both figure, which are essential liable for any country construction, are as of now confronting the headwinds from demonetization, GST, and RERA before the COVID-19 pandemic. So we can say construction industry was going through a lean stage, and COVID-19 has given more compound stunt to it. Next slide, please. It reveals from the figure that after recording a spectacular growth in the past half decade, the Indian GDP has all of a sudden lost steam since 2016 due to global financial turmoil. Not just this, the turmoil tremors created multiple impact across all the sectors. As per the current condition, it is predicted that Indian GDP growth rate will decay to minus 3.72 in single hit scenario. Bit by bit, about 40 days lockdown promoted a converse relocation with laborers leaving urban areas to return back to their towns. It is evaluated that around 6 lakh laborers stalled to their towns and around 10 lakh laborers are stuck in relief camps. And though there is a rare possibility, but if there is a stage of second hit, then in double hit scenario, GDP will fall touch minus 7.28. As per the RADI report, there were around 20,000 ongoing projects before COVID-19, and there were around 16 lakh workers went to their hometown or stuck in between. Because of unviability of workforce, proper supply chain, and government restriction, construction sector itself facing daily loss of around 30,000 crore. Next slide, please. As per figure 1, we have observed that in China, Indonesia, and Vietnam is successful in getting good FDI in construction industry. But since 2012, Indian construction industry FDI is decreasing. And looking to that, only central government has made some general reforms as well as financial reforms to attract FDI in construction industry, and the results are observed in 2018-19. The impact of reforms can clearly seen in figure 2 in last year, but still there are a lot of more required to reforms needed. Compared to other Asian countries, India has lower FDI investment in construction and infrastructure industries. It shows that there is a significant room in this sector. Foreign companies accounted for just 19% in India in comparison of 25% in China, 39% in Indonesia, and 50% in Vietnam. Persistent delay in projects will be bottleneck in growth of India construction sector. As per figure 3, in comparison of the BRICS countries in last few years, India has seen meaningful improvement in the RRI, which risk to reward index. After recording a spectacular growth of over 12% more than the country GDP in the past half decade, the Indian construction sector all of a sudden lost in last financial year, largely due to global financial turmoil. The tremors created impact across sector including steel, cement, power, petroleum, aluminium, IT, and ports, besides badly bruising the Indian economy. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Ashok. In the recorded history of human civilization, we have encountered two different shocks, one in form of 1929 Great Depression, and the another one was 2008-9 global recession. But in both of the cases, the growth, the world has recovered well, not only recovered, but has again a very good growth later on. And we expect that in the case of COVID-19 also, the recovery will be soon, and that once again will back to the chain or back to the development. All the panelists have given us a single comment that the whole world is right now facing a hard time. And Swami Vivekananda has very rightly stated about such kind of condition that the struggle you are in today is developing strength you need for tomorrow. Let's hope for the good. Before I move to the round 2, I would like to have a view of the participants. May I request Ritesh Bhai to please upload the poll questions, please? Yeah, I believe that poll question is visible to you on your screen. The question is, do you believe that the construction industry is ready to match the needs of the future challenges? Option A, certainly yes. Option B, maybe. Option C, not sure. Option D, probably not. Option E, certainly not. You are having 30 seconds. Let us see how the reaction of participants is about the future. Yeah, the responses are available. Out of 239 responses, 50 are saying certainly yes, 53 are saying maybe, 14 are saying not sure, 22 are saying probably not, and 7 are saying certainly not. So, yeah, the majority, or we can say the major part of the responses are going on positive side, and 93 could not submit within the time frame. Thank you for your kind responses. Let's move to the round 2. Let's move to Canada. Bahira, how do you see the future of construction industry and policies of government in Canada? Over to you.
Actually, we are not sure about the situation of COVID-19, how it will progress. And however, I can give you like an idea about what I see. So I believe that the crisis caused by COVID-19 showed us that things can be done differently. Actually, there are lots of benefits and lessons that we have learned from the resilience and disruption standpoint. Like in general, the technologies became very important from now on. So a lot of technologies that were already existed, but we found out that we have to utilize them more extensively. Like digital platforms, like adopting new innovations, new technologies, new materials. So any technology that will help us to protect the safety of the everyone in the construction industry and to accelerate the construction industry, this became really critical. Next, please. So I believe that one of the most exciting innovations that will be adopted for the future of the construction industry, and we really need to focus on automation and robotics, because the automation in generally for construction, there are many aspects for the automation in construction, and some countries have achieved a high level of automation, like for example in Japan. So we need to follow or to make sure that businesses will look into automation in the construction, because it is less time consuming. It is like tasks will be done with less. It will be less dangerous. Health and safety issues will be like the concern will not be that high as it is right now in construction. So, for example, if we see in the automotive industry, it hasn't been affected as much as the construction because of the human aspect in the construction we are facing. So perhaps the most common examples of automotive in the automation in the construction is in the machines. So there are, for example, there are self-driving machines that can be used for transportation of materials across the work sites, transporting heavy items. Drones, for example, is another issue for that will allow monitoring work sites without the need of active supervision. Automation in construction has also found its way for concrete mixing. Control systems and robotics are being used to mix concrete, lay cement, polish floors, removing surface water. This will allow companies to prepare precast ready-mix concrete products. Sensors are a key device that make automation possible. These devices can take real-time readings of locations, temperatures, pressures, and other conditions. So they will allow construction companies to automate many different machines and robots during their preference. Next, please. So another important point that I want to highlight is that the major projects which are already planned, they need to be re-evaluated because of the changes that resulted from COVID-19. For example, as you see here in the photo, we have one of the biggest projects going on here in Toronto, the subway expansion project. There is huge investment put into this project. Ontario started recently the bidding process on Toronto P3 subway, which is the largest project going on in Ontario. Infrastructure Ontario decided to break up the project into 3 construction pieces, and this was as a response to a commercial landscape that has changed dramatically as a result of COVID-19. So it's just an example. However, there should be another look into the project, which will be done, and the ongoing projects. Next slide, please. So on June 2020, the Government of Canada announced the Federal Gas Tax Fund to help Canadian communities recover from the pandemic to the local infrastructure project. There will be funding for research and development and testing. It's a program stream that develops new solutions to combat COVID-19. So we have actually some of the brightest minds here in Canada. We have funding. However, we need to focus on selecting the technology that will benefit really the construction industry, and to make sure that the academic world and the industrial world are working together in order to reach this objective. Back to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Beira. Ashok, how do you see, sorry, Beira, could you please mention about the innovations which are required for the future global construction industry?
Oh, yeah, okay. So actually there is a new vision for the design of building. I believe it will be required, like related to architectural design, urban design, even interior design, in order to protect the safety of. However, we need to balance, like we need to see the situation, and it's to get feedback from health officials, and maybe this will have an impact on our decisions in the design process and on maybe the future cities, how they will be designed. So also regarding equipment, so there will be, for example, materials that will be utilized to ensure antibacterial aspects. Dense cities were found to be a reason for spreading the coronavirus. We cannot decide if current pandemic is going to change city planning. How cities will change is still unclear. But what we are sure of that we need innovation in new ways of thinking, how we can make housing safer, more affordable, more environmentally sustainable. Next slide, please. So sustainable building construction developments are expected in the next period, despite of the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Prefabricated and sustainable constructions are going to be required. New materials or existing materials that's not extensively utilized, that will, for example, composite materials, FRP rebars. I believe it has a great link to accelerate the construction and to provide the safer and more environmentally friendly, and it's currently starting to be extensively used in construction. FRP rehabilitation systems, it exists for a while, however, it's not yet widely utilized till the moment. Green buildings are expected to make a revolution in the building construction sector. The vertically integrated and off-site construction business models are likely to be developed in the next 5 years. So back to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Baira. Ashok, looking to the current conditions, the recession in the Indian construction industry, what are the policy supports or what are the provisions given by the government?
Thank you, Vikram. To halt the downfall of economy and bring it back to the original status, Indian government announced 20 lakh crore package, that is stimulus packages given exclusively for the this government policies. RBI has lowered repo rate by 40 basis points and extend ongoing delay on loan repayment till 31st August 2020. Observing slow economy, government has already reduced corporate tax from 30 to 22%. Viewing the Association of Construction Workers in framing and Manrega's work, it is expected that they will not return back to project site till September-October. And with this consideration only, central agencies have also extended project completion date by 6 months without any penalty. Like prevailing scenario, infrastructure remains in top priority for addressing developmental gaps as considered omnipotent with potentials of lifting economies out of the financial turmoil. Governments around the world are pumping money to generate demand for goods and services by creating jobs through higher spending into physical and social infrastructure. Next slide, please. In current condition of construction industries, it needs immediate relief in terms of financial help, which can be in form of release of their pending dues. Looking the importance given to self-reliant movement by PM, there is a hope of more domestic material usage in future. The way Indian industry is developing, there would be more demand of industrial buildings in future too. Equally, developer has to critically maintain their financial flow. The impact of COVID-19 on project include delay of scheduled workers, disturbances, increase in delay claims, equipment, supply chain and value chain disruption, restrictions on new permits and cash flow shortages. The new barriers like social distancing, staggering of work, enhanced sanitary measures, etc. will reduce the productivity on project site. Construction industry looks for sure fire arrival of pending contribution from local and state government organization. Framework being emphasized by PM in his procedure of Independent India will be token well for household construction material request. As India keeping on industrializing interest for mechanized structure stay solid for neighborhood organization to extend their base to enter into the Indian market with their plant and assembling office, encouraging fast firm rebuilding and quick digitalization. Next slide, please. Central and state government in total has declared 150 billion package for housing sector. Particularly affordable housing in prime house focus of the Indian government. As per KPMG report, because of COVID-19, building industry may shrink 6.5% in 2020, but it will bounce back in 2021 by growth of 6.6%. India's first real estate investment trust project IPO by Embassy Office Parks, Bangalore was opened in March 2019. Though it has been success in US with 96% stake of real estate market and in Singapore and Japan with 55% and 51%. I would mark that Indian REIT market is still in baby phase with 14% ROI last year. It is expected that demand of flexible workspace, co-working spaces and convertible furniture will increase in mega and metro cities. Contrasted with Indian nations and Asian nations, India has lower FDI interest in construction and framework ventures, and that is a logo in splitting infra spending. The government has initiated innumerable initiatives to lift the sector from its current dormant conditions. The measures include authorizing the Indian Infrastructure Finance Company Limited to raise 100 billion by issuing tax-free bonds. Next slide, please. The graph clearly shows that out of total expected investment, which is more than 100 trillion, and expected investment boosted by 8.8%, covering 23 categories in total. 72% goes to energy, road, urban, and railway infrastructure only. The construction industry in value terms is expected to record a CAGR of 15.7% to reach 56,000 billion by 2022. Gartner advises that based on geometry parameters, we should design our innovative supply chain model supported by data analytics for future. KPMG has nicely noted in his report that those adapting to the abnormal is the new normal will be the survival. And those has to be survival, they have to make as a abnormal to the new normal. Technological improvement will no longer be the same changer, but will become business compulsion. Need of physical assets and infrastructure will remain in the new normal era of digital technology. Need of localized supply chain network will increase. Considering proactive approaches towards safety in construction, we have to go and think for the people's safety, health and well-being. Adherence to safety practices, formulations of HSEF policies, adoption of HSEF awareness, drive to build an overall safety culture, statutory compliance, work permit system and toolbox stock on daily basis, contractor selection, occupational health monitoring by creative and preventive action, implementation of hazard identification, fire prevention and emergency preparedness. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Ashok. So you mentioned about so many technologies. Then can you mention a little in detail that what are the future technologies which, according to you, which are needed for the global construction industry? Over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Vikram. Our counterpart has already explained construction automation. So I don't want to explain on the construction automation or that part. But looking at this coming normal scenario, some construction technology shall be implemented. That is drone technology. That improves communication, capturing real-time images from the field. Safety and marketing can offer many advantages. 3D printing, an additive concept rather than attractive process. In this technology, less material are used than traditional manufacturing processes, will reduce overall construction cost and also reduce the environmental impact. Off-site casting, precast, prefabrication and modular construction practices. In fact, the modular construction market has a projected annual growth rate of 6.9%, which precast is in regular use in few parts of the world, but it can be adopted in major part of the world in future. Almost it has to be required to make as an early construction. Even off-site construction practice may improve in future to avoid traffic disturbance as well as to maintain social distancing and better safety aspect. And looking at the green field of the project also. Mobile and cloud application to remotely access all information including drawing pertinent to multiple construction projects and job site, delivery schedule and installation structure. Reform of supply and value chain, building inventory, identifying backup distribution channels and recruiting direct labor to replace subcontractors would be part of reforms of supply and value chain in the time ahead. Integration of different technology will become more common in the coming time to reduce the impact of current recession. Over to you, Vikram.
What is the way forward for the UK construction industry? Over to you.
Sorry, I couldn't hear, but I presume the question is for me.
Yeah. What is the way forward for the UK construction industry?
Right. Thank you, Vikram. This question in itself is deep meaning in engineering term, in philosophy term, and we right from our engineering training we have been told that we as an engineer we solve the problems, but every solution to the problem we portray, we create those solutions. That becomes a problem in itself for the next generations to solve. So we have to break this cycle of we rather than we think we are solving the problem, but we are creating the problems for the future generations to solve, and the cycle continues. And this is what the generations of engineers earn their breads and butters from. So that is one very while we are looking for the way forward, it's a nature has given a kind of a hard but reset button. And while we are rebooting our entire system, including construction industry included, I think we should put a little bit more spirit into our actions, a little bit more open thoughts, creating problems that are more wholesome. Next slide, please. So let's keep philosophy aside and get back onto the ground. What exactly happens? So immediately after from January, March lockdown scenarios, the promises started to emerge from and advices started to emerge from just keep washing your hands. It become now keep washing the hands and build. That was the actual program now being promoted by the British government here with Prime Minister Boris Johnson's important, or rather say catchy phrase saying build, signifying that we need to take now on war footing our building our nation back. At the same time, Chancellor of Exchequer has announced quite a big, huge reforms, subsidies. In similar form, other panelists have already said in the context of their own countries. In similar context, billions and billions of pounds have been invested or promoted or promised to be extended to the UK businesses, construction businesses included. Next slide, please. And actually, there is actually a roadmap to recovery which has already been designed. It's still a design phase, and how we are seeing is that we see that we can overcome the COVID impact to a good extent or to a considerable extent in next 24 months from now. And there are 3 phases accordingly for the recovery plan is proposed in this road to recovery. They call restart, reset, and reinvent. Restart is the short-term immediate measures which already has taken place. Government has put in place a lot of subsidiaries, a lot of extension. For example, COVID job retention scheme is established, and it is going to be in effect until October 2020 as of now, which will retain the employment and ensure the employment remains undisturbed. Next phase would be midterm solution, what is called as reset, where there are strategies and strategical measures to increase the productivity and strengthening the supply chain, which has already been bent and twisted quite a lot, not only from COVID, but also from Brexit. And the final phase, what they see here is reinvent, which is rather a relatively long-term idea, and that aims at transforming the industry on a radical scale that can deliver better values for the objectives that we have. And there are 3 important steps that government has identified, that there are commissions and committees, those who are working on that, they have identified. And those 3 steps include the 3 what are listed here. Digitize the design. So the entire design, we do have quite digitized design at the moment, but it is just baby step compared to what the ambitions post-lockdown that we are carrying now. It should be more reliable and more better outcomes, not only from construction, but from every other sectors. From construction point of view, specifically, we aim to minimize the waste, because construction processes, be it planning process or constructing or maintaining or decommissioning, every other process of construction involves huge amount of waste, and we propose, or we aim to propose, that the off-site manufacturing techniques, if we can promote that can minimize this waste. That could be one side to look at. And obviously, we need now more resilient design, more resilient and robust design. Sustainability is always has been captured, already known to us, but robustness and resiliency for our construction outcomes has to be ensured. And these are the three-phase strategy that is sketched in the roadmap to recovery post-COVID. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Kunal. Now, as you have rightly mentioned about digitize the design, could you please give little more details about what are the other digital platforms which are required for the global construction industry in future? Over to you.
So if you go to next slide, please. Yeah, that shows some of the digital opportunities as we see. To be honest, innovation, as Bahira rightly said, innovation has yet to take its own shape. So what exactly the future holds in terms of innovation and technologies, probably I cannot conceive, or I cannot have a vision for that at the moment. Totally new technologies and digital avenues may emerge. But what we already knew beforehand, before COVID, we already knew in UK, and which applies to pretty much everywhere in the world, that our construction processes, as I said, needs to be lean. We have huge amount of wastage in terms of talent, in terms of time, in terms of efforts, in terms of materials, in terms of money, and that all can be minimized or reduced or eliminated using digital opportunities. For example, big data is one of those already known big thing that is happening across the world, which is reshaping a lot of sectors across the world. Construction is not spared from that, and work has already been started. In fact, since 2016, there has been a lot of research and practice related works coming up from big data, making more reliable predictions. At the same time, for example, artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques. See, one of the housing sector has suffered a lot here, and one of the reason for that was that because the house buyers cannot go into the market and to view the property. If those basic things doesn't occur, the buying process in the housing market would stop there, and entire chain of the events will be disturbed because of that. So can a machine learn engineer or machine learn system who doesn't require a client or the customer, potential buyer, to go physically into a house that they are interested in buying, but real scenario in an immersive environment, we can take them to and make life easy without even venturing out of our couches. And likewise, there are many other opportunities which we should take into account. If you go to the next slide, please. One of the other area where digital opportunities needs to be seized is risk reduction. You can see the photos here. These are a few of the projects that I finished before moving on to academia a couple of years back. And we were contracted with some inspection works which involve huge amount of risk. The orange spots that you are seeing, they are the actual human hanging in order to get some reliable physical information from existing infrastructure. Can something different, can something more easier, can something more safer can we implement, can we devise, which we can depend upon? We already have used unhuman aerial vehicles for those purposes, but they are still yet on a baby steps they are taking. They are not yet fully reliable. Next slide, please. So this slide actually shows that we have a program called Digital Build Britain, which was way before, I think about 2015-16, we have been designing, digitizing the design process and construction industry altogether. in order to harness the best advantage and being at the forefront of in terms of construction industry. UK always has been a leader in terms of global construction practices, and we want to retain here the same thing even post COVID scenarios. Next slide, please. And here at Liverpool John Moores, I just take this opportunity to show and highlight that we have cutting edge research facilities in those advanced areas like immersive experiences and drone and sensing technologies. My colleagues and I, we work together to develop more wholesome, timely design solutions which can be helpful not only to construction industry in the UK, but rest of the world and other sectors as well. Over to you, Vikram.
Evgeny, other speakers have talked about innovations, technology, and digital platforms. According to you, to make it sustainable, what are the requirements? Or to you?
Personally, I think the stabilizing of global construction industry will be supported on few main points as shown. First of all, we have talk about providing safety, health, and well-being. Next, we have to provide non-breaking development of diverse groups and skill sets. I mean, both improving of skills of current specialists and changing of education of specialists, which we can see in the future. Partially, we can escape of infection in the future if we provide industrialization of construction practices. For example, we can talk about better solutions in field of work conditions when we deal with precast elements for construction, because a bigger part of operation is made on plants where we can see most perfect condition of work. Undoubtedly, digitalization of global economy make us provide development of digital ways of modeling, designing and erecting of buildings. Nowadays, we can see powerful rising of BIM technology. And obviously, this rising will continue in the future. In my opinion, fast rising of digitalization form a very big volume of data in construction industry. And for this reason, I have to say about technologies, big data, of course. One of the main current trends, and especially future trends in data is data capturing, storage, analysis, and prediction. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you, Evgeny. Saab, what are the current working conditions and policy support provided by the government of Australia? Or to you?
Work from home is one of the policies which has been implemented. If 6 months ago I was told to let my staff to work from home and communicate via technology, I would not even think about it. But now it's proved that this is doable to a good extent, not 100% though. Or another plan is staggered work scheduling, where half the staff work in the office and another half stay home, and they change shifts every week. Coming to construction field, above rules may not be that applicable. Instead, we would more think about methods to reduce the direct involvement of the human in physical activities. This can be done by two approaches mainly. One would be developing precast precast industry to replace in situ construction methodologies. This is what the other colleague mentioned in their slides as well. And another one would be developing robotic industry for a higher engagement in construction. If you go to next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So moving on, let's focus on technology needs for what we are going to call new norm. The first and most important item, in my opinion, will be BIM. Even though the idea of BIM has been there for many years, it has not been adopted by organizations or not have been fully utilized by those which are familiar with it. A virtual meeting is another example. If we used to chat with our family and friends from the other part of the world on WhatsApp, now let's have our formal meetings on such platform rather than driving to another suburb just to meet with a stakeholder. If we used to record the progress of our project with a drone and put it on media for marketing purposes, now let's do our inspections with such technology and stop unnecessarily travels to construction sites, which also can cause safety issues. Especially that we like to have remote controlled cranes and excavators to work on site instead of human. So better not to be on their ways in person, in my opinion. And above all, we need training. Last week, for example, one of our meetings with a major government authority was delayed for 30 minutes because one of the attendees could not fix the issues that he had with Zoom. We need lots more training before letting technology to drive for us. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and now that we are providing such options to reduce the physical engagement in construction activities, I would like to add some emphasis and on other opportunities like being eco-friendly or becoming more sustainable. As an example, cementless concrete has already been tested in Australia, and we are working to secure investors for first projects to come. Or another example is a huge development in timber structures that are reaching their technological peak, and after adjusting their economical aspect, they can vastly be used in construction industry. The only question here is, what do we need from government or policymakers? What I would say is a reliable structure as the most important item. Example would be having optic fiber network to the furthest points of the lands, or providing training and incentives for skilled workers. Back to you, Vikram.
Thank you. Saab, the panelists have talked about innovation, technology, digital front, even sustainable. But I believe there is nothing without the challenges. There are so many challenges. According to you, what are the future challenges for the global construction industry? Over to you.
Thank you. So the challenges for the future, I mean, after COVID and its impacts, I would call the next future challenge as unknown. So unknown is our future challenge, uncertainties. We expect there will be a shortage in skilled workers, which will result in labor cost increase. This is after this situation is settled and economy starts moving. We need time till advanced technologies are developed. We have started at this stage, but they are not well developed, but we know they will be developing, but we need time for adjustment. And providing advanced technologies in smaller projects and in remote places will be also a challenge, because soon the language will change. So if you are getting used to work with the advanced technologies, how can we educate those who are working in remote areas? Another item would be uncertainties will impose more risk on construction, and justifying the share of each stakeholder will be hard. And we expect similar issues could be initiated again, like what the COVID specifically I'm talking about, which can be a result of a human negligence again. and it'll start from one point of the earth and spreading everywhere. I think we only have to hope that some sort of global agreement to be placed for a quicker response next time. And what I described above as the challenges in a glance would mostly cover the issues of human resources and working capital requirement and limited powerful drivers or developer, and also the attitude of the human and all the resources. Back to you, Vikram.
Thank you. Ms. Colling, senior psychologist from Australia, has rightly stated that human psychology is having 5 stages during the crisis: disbelief, anger, sadness, acceptance, and hope. And majority of the countries in the globe have passed on these 4 stages, first 4 stages in this COVID-19 situation. And we are moving towards the next stage, that is optimism or hope. Let's hope that everything would be good enough in the future. If you see this photograph, there would be 2 views. Someone can say that, yes, it is rising. Someone can say that, yes, it is falling. Whatever the view are, it is valid. It is possible to convert this pandemic into a launchpad for the more human, inclusive, and sustainable world. Richard Evans has rightly stated about the current conditions, that it is often the darkest skies that we see the brightest stars. So from these horrible conditions only, the new platforms, the new developers, the new ways of working will come out, and it will evolve the whole world. Now let's move to the last round of the webinar. We have received so many questions from so many participants, but because we are running out of time, so I would not take much more questions, but definitely I would take few of the questions. First of all, I would like to ask Mr. Ashok Shrivastava. Mr. Wyman P. Shanga is asking you, does the Indian construction industry have skilled workforce available to adopt the new technologies? Over to you. Ashokji.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Vikram. And this is a very good question asked by Mr. Bian Changya and some other participants also. So, question is very correct. Does Indian construction industry have any provision to make a skilled force available to adopt the new technology? Actually, this is required also. Whatever he is asking, if not, they can the new skilled workforce will not adopt the new technology. It is not possible to go in the modern construction work, or that construction automation and the part of the thing which is new technology is coming for that. So for that is required enhance the skills of present workforce. How we have to present the workforce of the skill by the cross skill. In order to retain the unskilled workforce, the construction companies are also trying to develop the skill of their present workforce by regular training of the workers to unkeep their skill, to ensure that they can earn more than what they can earn with their present skill. So increasing of the wages or the income, so motivation of the people is required to enhance the skill. Additionally, making arrangement cross training for extra skill, train workers to adopt new technology, and also demonstrate how much they value them. Because nowadays everybody wants to value the people. How to value the people? In the long run, it will help retain the workforce. Prioritize worker safety, driven by a unstable nature of employment, because fear has to outcome. The construction industry moving towards expand the recruitment drive. Construction companies now trying to get talented young caliber from educational institute and tap onto resources, then start giving training on need-based skill to adopt the new technology in construction industries. Proactive approach towards safety. Contractor selection is also required on safety parameter. So construction has to be go in the first drive, and everybody has to be trained. Use modern construction technology material, which also a part to reduce the need of more skilled laborers. The developers are engaging, adopting new ways can reduce their reliance on high cost skilled labor. For example, the use of control flow concrete not only help hasten the process of placement and finishing, but also reduces the workforce requirement and speed up the construction process. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you. Bahira, the question for you is, Mr. Tanay Shah is asking, glass fibers may pose hazard issues also. How the construction industry in Canada using these fibers? Over to you.
Glass fiber, so it is used in different forms in Canada. So in general, we use composites in construction in form of fabrics. It can be either carbon, basalt, or glass fiber, or in the form of FRP rebars. So there are codes of practices that consider all the health and safety issues that I believe the hazard will be more during the fabrication process, which is in a controlled environment in factories. So regarding the application, of course, health and safety has to be followed about the chemicals that are utilized. However, like if we follow the codes and the practices that is already well established, so the hazard will be really minimum in this case. I cannot see it as high hazard. On the contrary, so I believe like utilizing, for example, FRP rebars in construction, either glass rebars or other types, it provides more safety for the construction workers. It is less labor intensive, very heavy. It can be easily placed, and in addition, steel rebars can be more hazardous in accidents in construction sites. So it's a good point. However, the intensive research efforts and the intensive work from the code committees have already covered this part. And in addition to the health and safety regulations that is already established by the government, so there is no fear of, like, people usually are hesitant to use something or afraid of something that they don't they haven't used before, but I cannot see that there is some issues that should be scared.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Kunal, the question for you is, Dr. Rana asking you, HS2 project which you mentioned in your presentation is declared as unachievable by the government, UK government. Why? Due to lack of required construction technology or because of the financial issues? Over to you.
Right. Thank you, Vikram, and thank you, Dr. Rana, for your question. Well, HS2 is a flagship project for the UK. It's the 85 billion pounds worth of project. And conceptualized and planning has been started since last decade from the previous government, and it has gone through. You can see that if you see the scale and the technology and the challenges and the complexities that it involves from every facet of life, including engineering, it is an enormous venture. So it already had a lot of problems beforehand, and that was not because of finance is always a concern. That's we can't hide under the name that it's a British project, so it's always have the golden flower on it. It's not like that. Finance has always been a tricky issue, but somehow the government worked out to make it work. The finance and the delivery time kept on creeping on and on. So that was one issue why the problems started spiraling up. The second issue was, to a certain extent, there were some oppositions as well. from the public because some of the areas and the land that we needed to acquire for the HS2, and it may have some ecological implications, and some of the bodies of the society, they were having reservations against that. There were other issues, for example, Brexit that has happened, and Brexit has significantly influenced just before COVID has happened, and that was another side of it which needed to be taken into account. So already the problems were there. Then Brexit happened, the big punch, and now COVID. That's a last big punch. But just as I'm speaking, I'm an optimist person. So as I'm speaking, just a day or two before, I've received some communication mentioning that the government is boosting a little bit extra money. And when I say a little bit extra, I'm saying billions more into it in order to ensure that the project remains sustainable in terms of delivery and completion. And we are hoping that it will end up at some point of time in the future. So while there are challenges, but there are also opportunities.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you very much. Professor Evgeny, the question for you, Mr. Divyang is asking, do you feel that the global construction industry can meet environmental sustainability along with the financial sustainability? Over to you.
This question, in my opinion, the early recovery of economy should not be achieved at the cost of a bad attitude to the environment, since the impact of the economic crisis can be traced for several years, while the neglect of environment problems will affect the development of society for several decades. On the other side, green technologies could be a driver of global economy. For example, erecting of solar power station could help us increase contribution of high technology and at the same time provide stable rising of industry. In any economy, one of the most effective ways to recovery from the crisis is to implement major infrastructure projects, such as construction of roads, bridges, energy facilities, etc. These objects are good foundation for the future. Therefore, in my opinion, the implementation of infrastructure projects will be launched as soon as possible. Over to you, Vikram.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mr. Shah, the question for you is, Dr. Varya asking, how different disciplines can be integrated and coordinated under a single model? Over to you.
Thanks for the question. It's a good question. Look, what we have, let me explain this question under a platform which we call it Revit, which is a very reputable program. What will happen? Every discipline will produce a model in their area, say structure, civil, electrical, mechanical, and once an architect, obviously. And once all the models are prepared, there will be one BIM manager, if we call, which will integrate all the models as one. And through this integration, they will understand if there has been any clashes or if there has been any issues, and they go through detecting the problems and until resolving and preparing everything before going to construction site. Just imagine what I described to you. We are building the whole project in a virtual world, in a virtual platform before implementing, and then just compare this to 10 years or 20 years ago. Every discipline used to sit in their office and draw something on the bottle sketches paper, and then it goes to site with different standards, and how hard it was for the whole construction. Many times we have said that in the past there were not many questions like today or many issues or conflicts, but don't forget, in the past there was one project happening in years or 4 years, now 100 projects happening together. So we definitely need to equip ourselves with a program and platforms like this. The other good news is BIM is not only something to be used in the design stage, we take it to the site as well. Many times, or almost all the times, it happens, things and designs and plans need to be changed during construction. And if we have such an integrated model in a virtual world, we can quickly check the possibility and feasibility of that change to be implemented. So this is an example I can bring how to use how different disciplines can work on under one model. This is only a smaller, what we're trying to do is just creating a smaller model of what is going to be created and born in a real life. I hope this is answering the question.
Thank you. There is a single question which has been asked by multiple participants to multiple panelists. I want a single statement answer from each participant, each panelist on this question. The question is asked by Ms. Prachi, Mr. Gaurav, Mr. Batsal. The question is, how much time the construction industry in your country may take for the recovery, and what would be the growth rate in new normal scenario compared to the starting of year 2020? Let me ask first to Sahab Red. I want answer in a single statement. How much time it may take, and will it be above the starting of 2020, or it would be equal to starting of 2020, or will it be the growth rate of the new scenario would be below the starting of the 2020? Or to you, Sahab?
Yeah, I'm expecting, according to statistic, this to start from end of 2021 or close to end of 21, and it'll be above 2020, of course.
Thank you. Evgeny, what is your opinion on this matter?
Construction industry will require 2 or 3 years since decreases of main values may achieve 15%. In my opinion, the normal growth rate is about 5% per annum. At the first stage, we will see recovery of infrastructure sector, then industrial.
We need very short answer that how much time, and will it be above, below, or at the same level? Sorry for.
I think about 2 or 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Now, what is your opinion?
I agree with most of the panelists. I think I have full trust in our planning and strategies. 2022 is the time I see feasible that we'll get back on the track, but getting back in normal, turbulence died out, that may take long time.
Yeah.
How do you agree?
Bahira, what is your opinion on this matter?
Difficult to predict, since it is directly related to the health issues, and if there is a vaccination is discovered. As long as we don't have it, we cannot say. But the adoption of new technology will accelerate the construction. So I'm very optimistic about getting very quickly back to normal, or maybe better, hopefully.
Thank you. Ashokji, what is your view on this matter?
Vikramji, it will take 18 to 21 months to ramp up the construction activities as normal, with collaboration arrangement to development from that value chain management and supply chain management. And it will take by normal abnormal to normal, it will take certainly is 18 to 21. This is a one line answer.
And will it be above the current scenario at January 2020, or will it be equal to, or will it be below that?
Of course, this will be certainly, it will come above due to full-fledged adoption of technology, new and modern young talent, and fast drive move also, because whatever the losses has been occurred in last 18 months, it has to be ramped up. So it must be above.
Thank you. The better way to look at the future of the construction industry is work with innovative ideas, prepare for advanced technologies, and adopt the new digital platforms. And at the same time, we should be concentrating on the challenges also, and we should try for the sustainable growth, not only from the financial aspect, but from the environmental aspect too. To meet the global sustainability requirement, it seems that it's the time to reconsider CSR, in which S stands for sustainable, means corporate sustainable responsibility. The photograph here in this slide shows very clear message for all of us that it is the time when we should not lose our hope. So hold on, pain will end. At the end, I would like to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart for participating in this webinar. On behalf of Adani Institute of Infrastructure, I would like to convey my gratitude to Liverpool John Moores University UK for accepting our invitation and becoming the co-host of the webinar. How can I forget the panelists, Professor Kunal, Professor Bahira, Professor Evgeny, Mr. Ashok, and Mr. Shah, for their commendable job in putting up the tireless efforts to collect the data and presenting it in the effective way, and also taking pain to bear me so many times despite their mandate constraints. At the time, I would like to acknowledge our support team members who are not visible, but without them, it would not be possible too. At the last, I show gratitude to all those who have so ever directly or indirectly supported the success of this webinar. Bye-bye. Take care of you, your family members, along with your businesses. Have a great life ahead. Bye-bye. Thank you.